Remember to share your thoughts and engage with our content as we explore the depths of human complexity. What would you do when the one person who should remain off limits suddenly becomes the center of your world? This question haunted my every waking moment, persistent and troubling, yet impossible to ignore. It started with a simple moment of recognition, not the casual acknowledgement you'd give someone you'd helped mentor, not the comfortable familiarity of a young man who'd been part of your household routine, not even the amused sparkle that appeared when he laughed at my sardonic observations. This was something entirely different. It held weight, stretched moments into something delicate and dangerous. There was longing in it, primal and unacknowledged. I should have turned away. I didn't. That evening, the house embraced an oppressive quiet, a heavy stillness that seemed to seep into every corner. David was traveling again, another conference, the fourth this quarter. His explanations had become increasingly hollow, his departures more frequent. I'd stopped questioning him. The distance between us had crystallized into an unspoken understanding. And there was Alex, who had arrived in our lives as a devastated 17-year-old after losing his father, David's brother, to a sudden heart attack. I had tried to become what he needed: stable, nurturing, present, a guide, a confidant, a steady presence in his chaos. But now he was 23, transformed, confident, ambitious, no longer the withdrawn teenager I once knew. His laugh could brighten the darkest moments, and his eyes, those expressive eyes, had begun stirring something within me I wasn't ready to confront. That particular evening found me curled on the living room sofa, a half-empty glass of Chardonnay in hand. A mindless drama played on the television, its glow casting shifting shadows across the walls. The lavender candle I'd lit attempted to mask the emptiness, to distract from the loneliness that had become my constant companion. Then I heard him, his footsteps measured, purposeful. Alex appeared in the doorway, fresh from the gym, his workout shirt clinging to his frame, chest rising with controlled breathing. He entered without speaking, and I felt something within me respond with alarming awareness. Don't stare. Don't even acknowledge it. But I did. He ran fingers through his damp hair, muscles shifting beneath his skin, and he smiled. Working late again? He teased. Couldn't settle down, I murmured, forcing my attention back to the screen. He didn't retreat. Instead, he moved closer, settling beside me to close. His presence radiated warmth, the scent of him, clean perspiration, mixed with his cologne enveloping my senses. It was intoxicating, intimate, masculine. My heartbeat quickened, rebellious and wild. Everything all right? He asked, his voice soft, almost lost in the silence. I'm managing, I replied, taking a deliberate sip of wine to occupy my trembling hands. The silence between us deepened, becoming thick with unspoken tension. Then he spoke words that sent ice through my veins. I need to tell you something. His confession twisted in my stomach, sending waves of apprehension through me. When I looked at him, I saw his gaze dropping to my lips, the way his breath caught, how his fingers twitched as if wanting to reach out. What is it? I whispered. He swallowed hard, his throat working visibly. I've never shared myself with anyone, never been intimate. The admission hung in the air, dense and suffocating. Close your eyes for a moment. What are you? I'm 23, he murmured, his hand brushing warily across his face. And I've never. You understand. Untouched. He shared something deeply personal, a vulnerable truth he'd never spoken aloud. His gaze pierced through me as if I held the answer to some profound emptiness, sending shivers down my spine that I despised myself for feeling. Alex, I began, but he interrupted. I don't want it to be meaningless, he said, his voice rough. I want it to matter. My heart raced frantically. Someone will come along, they already have. The breath left my lungs. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining, rough yet gentle. You can't imagine how long I've wanted this moment. Every rational thought screamed at me to retreat, to laugh it off, to remind both him and myself that this was impossible. Yet as his thumb traced across my knuckles, slow and deliberate, something cracked inside me. I should have said no. I should have left. He leaned closer, and instinctively I froze, startled, uncertain, acutely aware of the boundary we were approaching. That was the moment I destroyed everything. The moment blurred not with passion, but with confusion, regret, and a silence that screamed louder than any words. I should have stopped it. I knew it was wrong. Yet my silence allowed the moment to extend far longer than it ever should have. Tentative at first, his hands gradually grew bolder. My skin ignited at his touch, each caress sending fire through my veins. He was filled with eagerness, a desperate beauty in his wanting, and when he finally, well, not quite yet, for this is where the real story begins. This is the tale of one reckless, intoxicating night that destroyed my marriage, shattered my family, and changed the trajectory of my life forever. Let me warn you, the ending will surprise you. I am Elena Marsh, and by 41, I had long abandoned any notion of happiness. No one could have predicted that at first glance. My life seemed enviable: a spacious home in an upscale neighborhood, a successful partner beside me, and a bright smile that served as my armor. Yet beneath this carefully constructed facade, I was suffocating. I hadn't always been this way. Once, I was the girl who saw life in brilliant colors. During university, I studied literature and creative writing, dreaming of a future where I'd travel the world, teaching and writing novels. Then reality struck: student loans, economic uncertainty, and the gradual, overwhelming pressure to conform. That's when I met David. Our union lacked passion, it was purely practical. David Marsh possessed an undeniable appeal that fit seamlessly into the polished world of corporate success. Well-groomed, perceptive, with a smile that promised security. He was 15 years my senior, divorced, carrying the quiet grief of a man who had lost his first wife far too young. I didn't love him, but I was drawn to his stability. At 28, with my dreams gathering dust, stability felt like enough. After 2 years of dating, we married. A smart choice, my mother observed. He'll take care of you, and he did, just not in the ways that truly mattered. Being a stepmother always felt unnatural. When I married David, I inherited a shadow: Alex, his 18-year-old nephew whom David had taken in. Alex embodied controlled chaos, a storm contained in human form. He was brooding, closed off, still raw from losing his father. During those first months, he barely spoke, glaring at me from beneath his dark hair as if I were an unwelcome intruder. But I tried earnestly. I cooked his favorite dish, Thai curry, with extra spice. I attended his basketball games, though he never acknowledged me in the crowd. I framed a photo of his father and placed it gently on his nightstand. He shoved it in a drawer that same night. That evening, I heard crying through his closed door. I didn't knock or speak, I simply sat outside, my back against the wall, and stayed until the tears stopped. The next morning, he made coffee for me. For the first time, it was bitter and strong. I drank every drop. Time passed. Alex grew into a man with commanding presence and sharp intelligence, possessing his uncle's smile but none of his restraint. He left for college, returned, and drifted through various part-time jobs. David ignored his nephew's aimlessness, just as he ignored my presence. Our marriage wasn't cruel, it was empty. We stopped touching, stopped talking, fell asleep like strangers sharing the same space. I told myself this was just life, that passion naturally dimmed with time. Until that moment, I discovered David's phone calls with her. Last night keeps running through my mind, he said. It was a colleague, he claimed. When I confronted him, I struggled to believe his words. But what options did I have? Leave? Start over at 41 with nothing? So I stayed. 3 months before the kiss, that's when everything changed. That's when I truly saw Alex, not as my stepson, but as a man. He came home late one night, reeking of alcohol and summer heat, his shirt clinging to his chest. As I stood at the sink washing a wine glass, he quietly approached from behind to get water. His chest brushed my back. We both stilled. For one impossible moment, the air around us crackled with electricity. He murmured an apology before leaving, but his gaze lingered. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen. That realization shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. I've never shared myself with another, Alex confessed that night, admitting his inexperience. I should have laughed it off, used the maternal card. Yet the way he looked at me as if I held the key to some desperate prayer unraveled me. For years, no one had looked at me that way. Not David. No one. As his fingers traced my wrist, silently questioning. I made the choice. That would destroy us both. I should have stopped him. I didn't. That failure would cost us dearly. You might find yourself understanding her, even as you hate yourself for that understanding. Perhaps you're judging me right now. In the silence, I can feel it. How could she? What kind of woman does? Such things. But here's the truth. All I wanted was to feel wanted, to be more than a placeholder in my own life. When he kissed me, after all those empty years, I felt alive. That fateful night, time seemed suspended. The summer air was thick with humidity, making clothes feel like burdens. David had left for another business trip, the same monthly journey he took, always returning with unfamiliar perfume lingering on his collar. The house's silence was palpable, an unsettling emptiness that hung in the air. Just me, a half-empty bottle of Merlot, and the restless energy of a man who wasn't my husband. Alex had been different all week, more intense, lingering in doorways, brushing against me as we passed in the hallway. His gaze lingered too long on my bare legs as I lounged on the couch. I told myself I was imagining things. We sat around the kitchen table playing cards, a silly drinking game he'd learned in college. With a playful smirk, he joked that strip poker would be more entertaining as he sipped his beer. I rolled my eyes in exaggerated exasperation. "In your dreams," I said, but my pulse quickened because he wasn't entirely joking. I could see it. In how his fingers drummed restlessly against the table, in how his expression darkened when I traced wine from my lips with my tongue. Then he challenged me deliberately. It was ridiculous, and I laughed, confronting him directly. "Are you serious?" His voice dropped, becoming rough and raw. "Maybe losing doesn't sit well with you." I reached for his cards. He caught my wrist, not tight, but not loose either. His thumb traced the sensitive skin beneath my palm in slow, intentional circles. The air around us grew thick, neither of us moved. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Tell me to stop." I didn't. Before I could process what was happening, his lips found mine. Desperate, hungry, the kiss held tender sweetness yet fierce. Demand. It was declaration, every tooth and tongue speaking of suppressed longing. His hands wove through my hair, and a moan escaped my throat. I should have pulled away. Instead, I clung to him, his body pressed firmly against mine, every nerve taut, every inch of skin blazing. His scent was sweat and cheap beer mixed with something darker, more primal, that tightened my stomach. His hand moved thoughtlessly, a moment too far. I recoiled instantly, horrified by what was happening. "I want you," he murmured against my lips. "You can't know how long I've craved this moment." I did know, because I had wanted it too. The kitchen counter pressed uncomfortably against my back as he lifted me onto it, sending the wine glass crashing to the floor. It shattered into countless pieces. Neither of us cared. His mouth traveled down my neck, teeth grazing my pulse point, and I arched back with a sharp intake of breath. His hands roamed freely, tracing every contour, as if he'd memorized my body in dreams. "I've thought about this," he confessed, his voice trembling with emotion. "Every single night. The revelation should have filled me with horror. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. How long did you think you could stay hidden?" The message arrived at 2:47 a.m., restless. I lay tangled in sheets, my body still echoing with Alex's touch from hours before. David snored beside me, oblivious. Suddenly my phone lit the darkness. Unknown number. "You have 24 hours to tell him, or I will." A photo was attached. Alex pressing me against the hallway wall, my head tilted back, his lips at my throat. My stomach plummeted. Someone had been watching. They hadn't just observed, they'd waited. The next 18 hours passed in anxious blur as I considered possibilities. The neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who perpetually lurked behind her curtains whenever Alex's car stayed past its usual time. David's assistant, the kind woman who had accidentally forwarded me those restaurant receipts. Or, God help me, David himself, setting a trap to measure my fall. Alex, upon seeing the texts, merely smirked. "Let them talk. Are you insane?" I hissed. This could destroy everything. He cupped my face, his thumb sliding over my trembling lip. Maybe it would finally free us. The next message was even more disturbing. Unknown caller, meet me tonight. PM. The old pier. Come alone, or the whole town sees. I stared at the text until it blurred. This was beyond blackmail, it was a reckoning. I found David in his study, pouring whiskey into an already full glass, his knuckles white around the bottle. "We need to talk," I said. He didn't look up. "About Alex." The breath left my chest. He had known. All this time he had known. I expected fury, tears, shouting. Instead, David simply sighed wearily. "I've been waiting for you to say something." Hot tears stung my eyes. "How long have you known?" "From the very beginning." He finally met my gaze, his own empty. Cameras. The lenses captured everything. The words hit like a physical blow. He had filmed us. David pushed his laptop across the table. There we were, Alex and me in the kitchen, his hands beneath my shirt. In the living room, my lips against his neck. In our bedroom sanctuary. You orchestrated this, I whispered. I needed proof. His voice carried unsettling calm. For the divorce. Cold understanding washed over me. He had encouraged my betrayal so he could leave unscathed. Then came the final blow. Alex is gone, David said. What? Sent to his aunts? In Oregon. Permanently. He savored his whiskey. Unless you want me to press charges. My blood froze. David had orchestrated everything, every step, every move. Now he held all the power. I lunged for the laptop, sending it crashing to the floor. David remained unmoved. It's backed up, he stated matter-of-factly. A scream built inside me, desperate for release. Instead, I took the only action available. I ran. The pier stood silent and deserted. There was no blackmailer, no confrontation, just my reflection. In the dark water, a woman who had risked everything and lost. David moved swiftly. The papers arrived 3 days after my failed attempt to escape, delivered by an expressionless attorney who wouldn't meet my eyes. The terms were harsh. No alimony infidelity clause, section 4B. No claim to the house infidelity in marriage. Exhibit D. Video recordings. No contact with Alex, restraining order in progress. I signed my name with trembling hands and returned the documents silently. What could be said? I had brought this on myself. In small towns, whispers spread like wildfire. When I finally ventured outside, stares followed like shadows. The grocery cashier, a familiar face for years, pressed her lips together and looked away. Neighbors crossed streets to avoid me. Even the coffee shop barista, once so familiar with my order, pretended not to recognize me. I was no longer respected. Elena Marsh, the devoted wife, the reliable friend. I was that woman, the one who crossed lines that should never be touched, who destroyed her marriage, who surrendered to capture. I tried calling Alex 847 times. His number was disconnected. David had ensured that, the last time I saw him, he was consumed with fury, a tempest of emotions, swearing he'd find his way back to me. But that was before his uncle unleashed legal devastation, before his exile to Oregon, before he realized I wasn't worth the price. On a cold November night, I walked to the lake where David and I had once taken Alex fishing years ago. The water looked deep, inky black, infinite. I stood at the edge, my toes gripping the weathered dock planks, and wept for the path my desires had carved. Would anyone truly miss me? Suddenly my pocket vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Don't. I never discovered the sender's identity, but I stopped. Eventually, everything worked out. As dawn light crept through the curtains, I awakened. I moved to another state, changed my name, took a job at a bookstore where my history remained unknown. On uncertain nights, Alex still haunts my dreams, his hands, his mouth, the way he looked at me as if I were his entire universe. But the truth lingers. I was never the heroine of his love story. I was merely his rebellion. Desire burns like unquenchable fire. It consumes you, captivates you, and if you're not careful, it will destroy your life. A year later, a postcard reached me. No return address, just 3 words in familiar handwriting. Was it worth it? I never replied. Deep down, the answer was already a resounding no. Alex's future unraveled through a relentless sequence of harsh, unforgiving consequences that began the moment his uncle cast him away. Stripped of his trust fund, his reputation, and any connection to the woman he swore he couldn't live without, he arrived in Oregon, hollow-eyed and filled with rage, collapsing onto his aunt's couch in a small coastal town where whispers of his disgrace preceded him. The murmurs followed him everywhere, ghostly and haunting. He's the boy who slept with his uncle's wife, the one who destroyed his family. Despite attempts to drown the memories in alcohol and violent fights, the truth clung to him like second skin. His once charming smile became a bitter sneer, his confidence replaced by seething anger that cost him job after job, leaving him with nothing but manual labor under the relentless sun, swinging a hammer until his hands were raw and bleeding. Meanwhile, his uncle's lawyers ensured any communication with Elena remained impossible. It hardly mattered after the 5th unanswered letter sent to her old address. Increasingly desperate, I still love you. I never meant for this to happen. I'll find a way back. She had already vanished, slipping into a new life where he didn't exist. The knowledge hollowed him out, taking something essential, leaving him empty. Until one night, drunk and shaking in a motel room, after years of silence, he finally called his uncle. "Why did you do this to us?" he asked, voice breaking. "You did this to yourself," Mark replied with chilling finality, and in that moment, Alex understood the full weight of truth. There was no redemption, no triumphant return, only the slow, crushing weight of a mistake that would forever define him. He stopped fighting, abandoned his dreams, and let the years reshape him into someone harder, colder, a man who drifted through relationships like a ghost, unable to trust, to form real intimacy, always waiting for the inevitable fall. It was one autumn evening, approaching 30, that he stood outside a diner in a nondescript town, staring through the window at a woman whose resemblance to Elena stirred familiar ache in his chest. For the first time in 10 years, he allowed himself to wonder, what if I had walked away? But the thought was too heavy, so he lit a cigarette, pulled his collar against the biting wind, and continued walking. Some roads lead in only one direction, and his had ended long ago. This narrative serves as a poignant warning about the devastating effects of forbidden desire and the lasting consequences of selfish choices. It demonstrates how momentary passion can destroy lives when reason is abandoned for want, revealing the truth that what begins as thrilling boundary crossing often ends in isolation and regret. Elena's journey shows how emotional neglect in marriage can create vulnerability to dangerous temptations, but never justifies betrayal. Alex's fate illustrates how youthful obsession and inexperience can be manipulated into lifelong damage. The story emphasizes that taboo relationships carry hidden costs far beyond physical pleasure, eroded trust, fractured families, and permanent stains on identity and social standing. Neither character emerges unscathed. Elena loses her marriage, home, and dignity. Alex loses his future and capacity for healthy relationships. The narrative underscores how society harshly judges those who violate fundamental moral boundaries, particularly when power dynamics are unequal. It reveals how easily desire can mutate into obsession, how quickly secrets become weapons in the hands of the wronged, with David's cold revenge proving that some betrayals awaken calculated cruelty even in previously indifferent partners. The tale warns that forbidden romances rarely end in mutual happiness, but rather in asymmetrical destruction, where the more vulnerable party suffers disproportionately. The conclusion suggests that some mistakes cannot be undone, no matter how deeply regretted, only endured as permanent lessons. The story ultimately functions as a dark mirror, showing readers their own potential for moral failure when starved for validation and connection. It challenges us to examine what voids in our own lives might make us susceptible to similar temptations, while affirming that some boundaries exist for profound societal and psychological reasons. The narrative structure itself serves as moral instruction by ensuring neither protagonist finds redemption or reunion, only the hollow aftermath of their choices. The lack of happy ending reinforces that certain lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. The final postcard's haunting question, "Was it worth it?" leaves readers with a fundamental question that every character must face before taking action. The story's strength lies in its unflinching portrayal of reality, devoid of sanitization or convenient absolution. Instead, it lays bare the aftermath of desire with stark honesty, serving as a cautionary tale that some flames are best left unkindled, for they cannot be tamed, only endured.